Good day, everyone. Welcome to Art Appreciation class. I hope that you have watched our previous lesson about artists and artisans, and I hope that you have accomplished the different learning tasks in the Google Classroom. But if you're not done with the learning task after this video, kindly proceed in doing the said activities. Okay, so for this video, we are going to proceed in discussing our lesson about elements and principles of art. And for our learning objectives, at the end of the session, you should be able to first enumerate the different elements of visual and auditory art. Second, differentiate the principles of art. Third, provide examples of the elements and principles of art in the study of art and its products or artworks. And lastly, illustrate examples of hybrid art and dissect what art forms are combined therein. So in our previous discussion, in subject and content to be exact, it was mentioned that arts have a specialized language. It uses a kind of language to communicate with its audiences. And for us to be able to understand this language, we have to be familiar. And, it's a requirement for us to know how, to know some of the elements and principles of art. And in this lesson endeavors to talk art and break it into its smaller parts or pieces for us to understand it fully. And through this lesson, it will allow us to a better view of art and the parts that completes it. So first of all, we have to identify the categories under art so that we would know where a specific of artwork or art form falls. We have this four elements that we are describing here. So first we have their visual or space arts, and as you can see, this is divided into two categories, and we have their two-dimensional art and three-dimensional art. When we say two-dimensional art, it is defined as the kind of art that possesses the dimensions of height and width, but does not possess depth. Okay, so that is two-dimensional art. When we say naman three-dimensional art, on the other hand, it's the kind of art that occupies, or as the name suggests, it has three dimensions, namely height, width, and depth. So yung nauna, the two-dimensional art, it only possesses two dimensions, which is height and width. And in three-dimensional art, it has three dimensions, which are height, width, and depth. Okay, so for us to understand the two categories under the visual art, let us take a look at some examples. Okay, so as you can see on your screen, we have their examples of two-dimensional art. We have their paintings, drawings, prints, and photography. On the other side of the PowerPoint, we have their examples of three-dimensional art, which are sculpture, environmental art, craft and folk art, architecture, and lastly, mixed media art. So when we say environmental art, kasi ito yung hindi masyadong familiar sa atin, kasi yung paintings, drawing, prints, photography, madalas na natin siya nakikita at madalas na natin siyang naririnig. Also, sa example ng three-dimensional art, yung sculpture, alam na natin yan. Palagi tayong nakakakita niyan sa mga museum. So, very popular na itong mga medium na to. And as for environmental art naman, this is a kind of art, of artwork that uses materials that are found in nature. So, the artist can use sand and water. So, it's like eco-friendly stuff or eco-friendly artwork. Ito namang craft and folk art. Examples are basket weaving, doll making, furniture making, making ceramics, and also pottery. In mixed media art, materials used to create mixed media art include but are not limited to paint, clothing, paper, wood, and found objects. So again, those are the examples of two-dimensional and three-dimensional art. So I hope that you have grasped the difference between these two categories under the visual art. Okay, so now let us go back to the other categories that we were talking about a while ago. So in number 2, we have their auditory arts or time arts. Auditory art is art that is heard at one particular time. Kaya siya tinawag din na time arts. Examples of auditory art include music and poetry and also spoken poetry. Okay? Literary arts, we have mentioned this doon sa mga nauna nating lesson in art appreciation. Ano yung different mediums ng art. When we say again literary art, it is something in the form of writing or stories that have artistic and cultural value that displays the beauty of speech and language to convey certain meanings. Combined arts naman, based from the name itself, is where different art forms interact and create something new and exciting across outdoor arts, carnival, festivals, spectacle, interdisciplinary work, live art, and participatory and also social art practice. Okay, so now let us now proceed on the main agenda of today's topic, which is again the elements and principles of art. So we are going to discuss the 6 elements of art, namely line, shape, form, space, color, and lastly, texture. So these elements are the building blocks of all kinds of artwork or all kinds of art, and this is a great way to start when you analyze or when analyzing or interpreting works of art. So let's start with the first element, which is line. Okay, so line is the element defined by connection between 2 or more points. It can be horizontal, vertical, or diagonal, straight or curved, or thick or thin. So in visual arts, lines are made when you draw or paint marks on a paper or even in a canvas, or when materials such as wood, glass, and metal are bent or shaped. Lines are also made by photographers and filmmakers when they choose how to angle their cameras and how to compose their shots. Again, lines can be horizontal, vertical, or diagonal, straight or curved, or thick or thin. And sometimes, one line can be all of those things. Lines can be described as many ways, like dashed, dotted, rough, smooth, zigzag, or implied. Okay, so every artist has a unique way of making lines. It's the artist's way of expressing their individual style and can also give their audiences different meanings and interpretations of their artwork. Next element is shape. Okay, so shape naman constitute a closed line. So it can be geometric, like shapes, circles and squares, or organized or free form or natural shapes. Shapes express length and width through its flat visual form. Shape is when a line crosses itself or intersects with other lines to enclose a space, and it creates a shape. Shape is two-dimensional and has height and width but no depth. So, fruit has played a prominent role or an important role in the history of art. It's long been a favorite subject for artists, and looking at a still like fruit artwork is a good way of studying how artists approach making shapes. In visual art, lines are flat and are defined by their length and width. And there are infinite kinds of shape, and it would be easier for us to identify the shapes by putting it into categories. So first, we have what we call geometric shapes, as we have mentioned a while ago. Geometric shapes examples are circles, squares, rectangles, and triangles, yung mga natutunan nyo during kindergarten. So, yun, geometric shapes. We see them in architecture and also in manufactured items. Second category under shape is the organic shape. So, when we say organic, it means natural. It somehow comes from the nature, like leaves, seashells, and flowers. So, those are organic shapes. We see them in nature and they have free flowing, it is informal, and has irregular characteristics. Next is positive shapes. In a drawing or painting, positive shapes are the solid forms. Ano po? And in a design such as a bowl of fruit, in a sculpture, positive shapes are solid areas of the sculpture that remain after removing portions of the sculpture. Of course, meron tayong positive shape, meron din tayong mga negative shapes. In a drawing or a painting, the space around the positive shape is what we call the negative space. Okay? Negative space can form a shape when it meets positive shape. Negative space can include the sky or spaces between objects, and in sculpture, the negative space is the portion that is removed from a sculpture, and the negative space can become a shape when it meets the positive form of the sculpture. And next is the static shapes. Static shapes, it appear stable and resting. Shapes that appear stable and resting. And lastly, we have last category for the shape is the dynamic shapes. Shapes that appear to be moving and active. Okay? So, things like that. Yung example ng artwork na yan. Yan. It somehow gives us parang vision na nagmo-move yung image. Okay? So, next element is what we call form. Form, unlike shape that is flat, form is a three-dimensional element of length, width, and depth. Forms composed of shading attribute to the present dimension of depth. Like examples are cylinders, boxes, and pyramids. Ano po? Those are the basic examples of forms. And art sculptures best represent this element of art, which is form. Trompe-l'oeil, translated from the French, literally means fools the eye. It's a style of art that makes you question what you're seeing is real, if what you're seeing is real. It's the illusion of depth that artists create, which tricks our vision or our eyes. Again, when shapes get this third dimension of depth, they become forms. Forms na ang tawag kapag nag-improve na siya into, or nag-upgrade siya into third dimension. Again, when shape gets the third dimension of depth, they become forms. Okay? So, form is the three-dimensionality of an object. And shape is only two-dimensional. Form is three-dimensional. You can hold a form, walk around a form, and in some cases, walk inside a form. Value can imply form in drawings or paintings. For example, shading a circle in a certain manner can give it the illusion of a sphere. Form takes up space in either a real or implied way. In paintings or drawings, for instance, form is implied because it's an illusion of three dimensions. And visual artists use light and shadow effects to create the illusion of the three-dimensional form. A strong sense of form can also be created by increasing contrast between highlights and shadow areas. You're going to learn or be familiar with the terms that I am giving you guys na related dito sa mga elements of arts as you access the other learning resources sa ating Google Classroom. Okay, so words like contrast, shadow, things like that. Okay, balik tayo sa form. Sculpture, on the other hand, is sa sculpture, form is real because it takes up three-dimensional space. Ano po? And unlike doon sa mga sinabi nating nauna kanina, implied ang kanilang form kasi yun nga, it gives us an illusion lang na para siyang real object. Okay, so that is again form as an element of art. Okay, so next element is the space. So space is described as the area around and between object, and space creates an illusion of depth, whereas real space is three-dimensional. And the space around the object is called again the negative space na mention natin kanina, and negative space creates shapes. Okay, so again, space is the area in which artwork is organized. It encompasses the area within a work of art and can also include the area immediately outside of and around a work of art. So just like in lines, in space, we also have categories. And we have two categories to be exact, the positive and the negative space. So the positive space, similar to a positive shape, it is the actual sculpture or the building. Again, it's the actual sculpture, actual artwork, or actual building. A three-dimensional object with positive space will have height, width, and depth kasi three-dimensional nga siya. Going to the second category, which is the negative space, similar to negative shape, again, it is the space around the artwork, or for example, space around the sculpture or a building. Okay, so for example, negative space surrounds a sculpture or object. A person can walk around sculptures and objects, look above them, and enter them. Space refers again to the space inside, around, and above the artwork or sculpture or again object. Space in a two-dimensional drawing or painting refers to the arrangement of object on the picture plane. The picture plane is the surface of your drawing, your paper or canvas. You can have a picture plane that is crowded space with that is a crowded space with lots of object, or an empty space with very few objects. A two-dimensional piece of art has height and width but no depth. So again, the illusion of depth can be achieved by using perspective. Perspective is the technique that is used to create the illusion of depth in your picture. And perspective makes your picture look like it's moving to the distance, like in a landscape or cityscape. Okay. Next is color as an element of art. Color is the result of the reflection light off the object surface. It has three main characteristics. Hue is what we name colors such as red, green, and blue. Intensity or saturation, in other words, is how dominant the hue is, and value is how light or dark the color is. Again, color comes from light. If it weren't for the light, we would have no colors. And light rays move in a straight path from a light source. Within this light, rays include all the colors in the spectrum or a rainbow. Shining a light into a prism will create a rainbow of colors because it separates the colors of the spectrum. When the light rays hit an object, our eyes respond to the rays that are reflected back, and we see only the reflected colors. For example, a red ball reflects all the red light rays. As artists, we use pigments in the form of powder or liquid paints to create color. In categories of colors, we have primary colors, secondary colors, intermediate colors, and complementary colors. By the way, a color wheel is a tool. The color wheel, as an example, yung nakikita nyo sa inyong screen, is a tool that can help you in using or organizing colors. And sabi ko kanina, we have categories ng colors. First is the primary colors. Ano po? Ito yung red, yellow, and blue. So, these colors cannot be mixed and must be bought in some form. Again, it cannot be mixed. Okay? Secondary colors naman are orange, violet, and green. So, these colors are created by mixing the two primary colors. Okay, so again, yung una, yung primary colors, these colors cannot be mixed and must be bought in some form. While secondary colors naman, these are created by mixing two primary colors. Okay, intermediate colors, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, as an example. So, mixing, dito naman sa intermediate colors, mixing a primary with a secondary creates this kind of colors. Okay, so complementary colors naman, colors that are opposite to each other. Colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So when placed next to each other, they look bright, and when mixed together, they neutralize each other. Okay. So, since that we are also talking about colors, let us also discuss about the color harmonies. So, color harmonies are certain combinations of colors that create positive looks or feelings. Analogous colors are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. For example, examples include red, red-orange, and orange. Triadic colors naman are three equally spaced colors on the color wheel. For example, yellow, red, and blue. So these are triadic harmony color scheme. Monochromatic is one color used with different values and intensity. For example, light brown, brown, and dark brown are monochromatic colors. Warm colors are on one section of the color wheel and give the feeling of warmth. For example, red, orange, and yellow are the colors of fire and look warm, and it look warm, right? Cool colors are often on the other side of the color wheel from the warm colors. Okay, so medyo may distansya ang ating nasa other side yung warm colors, while nasa other side naman yung mga cool colors, and they give the feeling of coolness. For example, blue and violet are the colors of water, and green is the color of cool grass. So this is very important, especially in different profession. Actually, you can use it if you are going to be an entrepreneur in the future. You can use the right colors. You have to have the knowledge about colors in doing your marketing strategy for your business. Because if you're going to choose the wrong color for your business or for a certain product, it will not work, right? So colors are very important in different profession, not just in art. Okay, so lastly we have texture. So texture, it is the surface quality that can be seen and felt. So the subject's texture on a work of art does not necessarily represent its quality. Again, texture is the surface quality of an object. A rock or yung bato may be rough and jagged. A piece of silk may be soft and smooth, and your desk may feel hard and smooth. Texture also refers to the illusion of roughness or smoothness in a picture. For example, in painting, the texture often only represents the visual representation of the art and not the actual texture of the subject. While in three-dimensional art, the actual texture provides the physical rendering of subject's texture. Categories of texture, we have real texture. Real texture is the actual texture of an object. Artists may create real textures in art to give it visual interest or evoke a feeling. Real texture occurs only in a three-dimensional sculpture or a collage. A piece of pottery may have a rough texture so that it will look like it came from nature, or a smooth texture to make it look burnished. Implied texture, on the other hand, another category under texture, it is in two-dimensional art. Ano po? It is made to look like a certain texture, but in fact, it's just a smooth piece of paper, like a drawing of a tree trunk may look rough, but in fact, it is just a smooth piece of paper. It's just kind of parang illusion lang na nagbibigay sa atin ng feeling na yung drawing ng tree ay parang rough. But again, in fact, it is just a smooth piece of paper. Okay, so these are the example of real texture. Okay, so we also have implied texture. Okay, so far we have talked about so far we talked about visual arts, space arts. We also mentioned about the two categories under visual arts, the two-dimensional art and three-dimensional art. We also mentioned about things about auditory arts or time arts, literary arts, combined arts. We also discussed the 6 elements of arts, which are lines, shapes, forms, space, color, and texture. Now, after watching this video, kindly proceed in our Google Classroom, and what I want you to do is to access the and maximize the learning resources. Kindly read and comprehend the different learning materials and make sure to accomplish the given task on time. Again, this is Art Appreciation and this is Ma'am Kath. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys during our synchronous schedule. Bye!